Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes. Other side of the screen, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, Chicago Bears got better today.
I love the free agency time. It's like Christmas, and we were all excited last night, hoping they would do what we want them to do, and we got some of what we want. It wasn't a full slate of what we were hoping, but I think it was a pretty good overall initial haul by the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Christmas, if you have like a really big extended family, right? Like maybe you're going to like one set of grandparents, a few days ago, and then you're traveling to a different set of grandparents, and then maybe you're going over to like a Friendsgiving. Like maybe you're just doing a bunch of different stuff because the Bears were active early.
Yeah.
And then just kind of kept dropping them every day, right? So maybe that's like the Hanukkah plan where you get a gift every day for like 12 days or whatever it is. That's what it feels like with the Bears. They started early. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna go through all of the big moves and then cover some odds and ends tonight. But I think just overall sitting back, like, are you like, what's your vibe right now? Like, are you feeling like this is pretty good, or are you like, strikes and gutters?
I'm still kind of on the high with the Ben Johnson high. So like I'm watching the way my team is doing their stuff, and I'm like, I can't really complain about nothing here. I know a lot of Bears fans it's their nature, right? They want to gripe, they want to complain because they don't want to get hurt again. But I'm like, I'm on a high from Ben Johnson, and look, Ryan Poles is making moves. Look, we were both kind of out on Poles. Like we were like, hey, it can go either way, right? If they want to get rid of him, that's fine with us. They kept him. And I think we're seeing here Ryan Poles now, he's addressing players for his coaching staff, which is what he probably did for Flus. And it just didn't work out because of Flus was a boob. But here we are. And I don't know, so far, I mean, look, if Ryan Poles keeps this up, I think some of the narrative may shift with fan base about Ryan Poles too.
Yeah, Brandon Thorne had an interesting tweet earlier today. He tweeted out a bell curve, and you know how much I love bell curves, normal curves, whatever you want to call them. And he was talking about, most players fit in the middle. Most players are like in the average zone here, which is about 2/3 of the players of the league. And then to go above that, like these really good players, or to go below that, but the fan discourse is always like, you're great, you're the GOAT, you're number one, you're the best in the league, or God, you're awful, you got to get off my team, you're the worst. And I think that extends to coaches. I think that extends to general managers and how people talk about them. And the way that I've kind of, oh, you want to fire Poles, fine, whatever. Oh, you want to keep him, fine, whatever. Like I don't think there was enough there for me to say that he was like so bad that he needed to go, because there was a lot of good things that I think he was doing. And so I wasn't upset that he was kept. I just want to see what it looks like with Ben Johnson, right? But you step back, and Ryan Poles has been able to acquire a prospect that was talked about at the level of like Andrew Luck, John Elway. Like, I mean, they got the quarterback prospect, and now they got the head coach prospect, who I personally have been in on for a very long time. That
a couple years now.
Yeah, a couple years now. That people, you want to talk about the more recent names that he's been comped to, like Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay kind of thing. But, Rex Ryan talking about how this is the next Bill Walsh. Like, there's some pretty high expectations for Ben Johnson here too. Same general manager acquired both, right? And so let's see what he can do. Maybe he's just an average GM, and maybe that's fine if you have, a guy that can develop into a top end quarterback with a guy that can develop into a top end head coach, like a guy that can just make things happen. I'm willing to see. And I think we saw a guy make some things happen here the last few days. Clearly they had a plan. Clearly Ryan Poles has probably been left at the altar a few times here in free agency and said, I'm going to take the sure thing on a couple of these moves. So overall, like, I'm feeling really good vibes about this. You want to give all the credit to Ben Johnson? That's fine with me. I'm number one Ben Johnson fan, right? But you have to at least extend a little bit of credit to the team. And I think for me, I think you got to shake the Etch-a-Sketch just a little bit, kind of forget about maybe some of the things that happened with Flus, and give this guy a chance to try to build this with Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like, that he was kind of saddled with things a year too long. I mean, we should be heading into year 2 of Caleb and Ben. I mean, if they would have done this right, that's what they would have done. They would have got rid of Flus last year. For whatever reason, they had to hold on to him, whether it was a money thing, whether it was a George McCaskey thing, whatever. It's a year too late. We're all seeing it now. The players have all kind of come out after the fact. Now they can kind of talk about Flus, and kind of say how they really felt about it. Change had to happen. It happened. We got Ben Johnson. I mean, it's a good time to be a fan right now. And look, if fans want to gripe, Joe Thuney, he's over the hill. Okay, coming off 2 consecutive All Pros. This is what's really this is a conversation happening not only on our comments, social media. He sucks. He's terrible. Okay, well, do you believe in Ben Johnson or not? I mean, if you were all in on Ben Johnson higher, these are guys Ben Johnson wants. Does Ben Johnson all of a sudden suck? And it's all woe is me, woe is us as a fan base. Let's all be sad and be upset. And, I can't be hurt again. I'm going to be sad and depressed until I see him win 40 games. Come on, grow up, be a fan. If you want to be a fan, be a fan. If you don't want to be a fan, cry about it. I mean, like where are we as a fan base right now? It's really strange that there's already this, I'm so sad and upset and pissed off in the off season for a brand new regime. It just weird to me where the fans
there's a lot of can't win, I think, with some fans.
Yeah.
I think that this offensive line looks great. We're going to get into it here. But they remade the interior of this offensive line. This is what we have talked about for a long time. We expected this to have a new starting interior offensive line going into next year, of course. I didn't know if they could do that with veterans necessarily. They maybe have put themselves in a position where they needed to count on, a guy like Bill Murray to step up, or that's what they've done in the past.
I'll tell you what, if Bill Murray was the plan, a bunch of our fans would be fired up over that. I have not seen so much Bill Murray love on the timeline or on the comment section. Are you guys shitting me right now? He's at 40 reps, 40 snaps in his Bears career, and this guy is the second coming, according to much of our fan base. Are you shitting me with this, Bill Murray? Hey, I'm rooting for him. I hope he can do it. But come on, this is a guy who was a practice squatter. He barely had a chance to play. He's still learning the position. If he can become a serviceable guy, I think if the best case scenario, he's a top interior reserve, that's a huge win for Bill Murray. But some guys in our fan base are talking like he's the second coming. Like, get out of here with that. Are you serious?
You haven't seen this much Bill Murray love since Ghostbusters came out?
Oh my God, Bill Murray. I like in our circle of our chat, like every day there was Bill Murray praise. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? Which one of his 40 snaps was your favorite? Against the Carolina Panthers? One of the worst teams, one of the worst D lines last year, and they were missing their best defensive tackle at the time. So yeah, of course, Bill Murray could look serviceable against the Panthers last year in his limited time, but holy cow, dude, Bill Murray, give me a break. I'm rooting for him, but
I'm rooting for him too. We've seen this team put themselves in a position where they've had to count on guys like that for significant snaps, right? And so, my expectation was that they would address at least 2 of these spots in free agency and then draft another player, which is always tough to use, a first or second round pick and say, you're a starter now, right? Like that's a tough thing to ask. That does happen, particularly when you can slot a guy in a guard. Generally is something that you can do here, but they said, no, we want some surety here. Right. So let's get into those specific moves. So the first move that was made was the Bears sent a 6th round pick this year to the Rams for Jonah Jackson. Now, Bears fans may be familiar with the name because he played for Detroit. He would have played with Ben Johnson. So this is very clear. This is not one of those situations where I think Ryan Poles ignored his coach, right? Like, clearly he didn't just go out and get this guy and say, hey, surprise, here's Jonah Jackson. I think this was clearly Ben Johnson said, go get my guy.
Yeah.
And a 6th round pick is obviously a very low draft pick compensation. There was talk that, there was a couple teams interested. So the Bears 6th round pick was probably the best they had on the table. He's not cheap. He signed a pretty nice, contract last year, but it's surety. And what we have seen in this first day of the legal tampering period is that guards are really expensive. And so it's looking a lot better than it did just a few days ago when people were like, oh, that's pretty expensive for that guy. Right. Jackson gives you a certainty because he knows the coach. Yeah. He's an athletic guy. He kind of just had a bad run in LA, right? Like he was the top guard on the free agent market last year, signed a big deal, and then got hurt coming into camp, and then just kind of bounced around. They liked the young guys that stepped in. They kept the continuity. And so he just found himself out. That's why he was available. Now, you want to say he sucks. You want to say like, oh, he was garbage last year. He can't stay on the field, blah, blah, blah. I mean, to me, this was a really smart buy low opportunity to go get your new head coach, one of his guys.
All the guards in the market that were free agents, they all have some issues. Will Fry is coming off an injury. A lot of the Tevin Jenkins, obviously we know his injury history. There were a lot of injured guys coming up there. You're like, okay, they're going to have to pay one of them. I mean, a lot of Bears fans wanted Fries. The other one, the guy from Detroit, Zeitler, he's 34 years old. So there's some age issues there. He's been relatively healthy, but he's at that point now, even where interior offensive linemen start to kind of go the other way. So here they are. It's a relatively young player. And the thing about the contract is I like the contract because if he comes in and does not bounce back from his injury, which obviously Ben Johnson thinks he will, that's fine. Then you get rid of him after the season, and there's barely any dead cap space. So it's a nice, like I said, a 6-round pick, low cost, as far as what they're having to give up for him. It's better than going out and signing a guy for, Will Fries would have cost you what? A 4-year deal, 3-year deal. You're talking, $20 million a year and $19 million a year. So low cost deal. He has some flexibility inside. He has played center. He has played both sides of guard. He has most of experiences obviously on the left side where Tooney was going to play, because Tooney's the all pro, but you can play Jackson, at the other guard, and maybe he's your center. But now with Dahlman today, that's off the table because now the Bears got their center.
Yeah, clearly he's going to be slotted in at right guard.
Yeah.
He's got the whole offseason to kind of put himself in that mindset to be the right guard. He's big. He's athletic. He can move. There's a lot to like about Jonah Jackson. Some people are going to say he's been injured a lot. That's true. It's a tough spot to stay healthy. But hopefully he can get a lot of games in, and we can get a lot of healthy reps out of him. That was move number one.
Real quick, the thing about a guy like Jackson is, look, I'm not grinding Lions tape and Rams tape, 24/7, but you go to guys that are like Brandon Thorne, one of the top O-line evaluators in the Twitter sphere space and any of analysts. He's high on Jackson. He was he said Jackson was his top free agent a year ago before the Rams signed him. So you're looking at a guy that is still relatively young, has upside. You look at his film from this year. Yeah, it was all over the place because of the injuries that shut him down. But again, what's the cost? A 6-round pick, and how often do those guys pan out anyway? So,
right, and
I'm good with it.
Again, you always got to ask yourself, why are these guys available?
Yes.
Right. So he's available because he was, he signed a pretty rich deal, and he lost his job in some ways, I think, due to injury. Right. So the Rams drafted and developed, which is always the ideal.
That's the
right. And so they have cheaper answers on to fill that position. And so they were able to get a low pick out of it and get out of the cap hit that they would have taken.
Yeah.
Bears gladly take it on. He fills one of those spots. I thought it was a nice move in a vacuum. I think it's a good move. Yeah. And I think overall, now that we've seen the picture, it's still a good move. I still like it. Right. So then you go to move number 2, which was the big one, which I don't think has gotten enough fanfare because there's so many things that are happening in the NFL, right? When the dust settles, though, I think we're going to come back to this, and you're going to hear more and more people praise it. But then I think it's going to really show up on Sundays, which is obviously the point of all of this. And that is the Bears send a 2026 4th-round pick to the Chiefs for Joe Thuney. And Joe Thuney may be entering his 10th NFL season, I think. I think that's right. He's got 4 Super Bowl rings, 1 with the Patriots, 3 with the Chiefs. Obviously, Ryan Poles was part of the process, or at least knew, the process bringing Thuney in over from the Patriots before he came, before Poles came to Chicago. So, he knows the player. And, I don't think that you can overstate just how important it is for a leader to kind of take charge of a unit like that. And somebody who has 4 Super Bowl rings, I think will certainly come in with a lot of gravitas and credibility to be able to lead that group. This is all, it's not just a leader though. And it's not just the guy that's on his last legs. This guy has earned 1st team All-Pro, the last couple of years. And you say, well, he's over 30. Okay, fine. Linemen play pretty consistently 11, 12 years. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty consistent for what you can get out of your body, your career. A lot of guys might hang it up if they think they've, like Zach Martin, I think was 11 years. He ran into some injury issues. And I think he hung it up because, he just wasn't, his body wasn't maybe quite where he was, and he's already in the Hall of Fame. Joe Thuney's on an interesting arc. I did a little dive into his career. He reminds me a little bit of where Jason Kelsey was a couple years ago, where he was a good, solid player early on, but he just kept getting better. And then he started getting the recognition as being one of the better players at his position. And then Jason Kelsey just sort of started stacking real big honors, right? Thuney's maybe a little behind that from where he is, but he's starting to stack those honors. And if Joe Thuney wants to, I don't know what these guys are motivated by, but Joe Thuney has a chance to be in the Hall of Fame. Some might argue he's already got 4 rings. People recognize him as the best offensive lineman on those Chiefs teams. Maybe he's already there, but if he's able to really put more quality seasons together in Chicago, turn around a unit in Chicago, and then maybe have some postseason appearances, I could see Joe Thuney putting his final stamp of his career in Chicago that leads to Canton, right? So that's how good of a player this guy is. So not only are you getting the leadership, I think you're getting one of the best. I mean, it's not even just my opinion. He's a first-team All-Pro. This is a guy that's going to be one of the best guard plays in the entire league. It's a huge move for Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, he's still in the prime of his career. I mean, we talk about offensive lineman. We talk about Zeitler at 35. Maybe he's starting to go downhill. Well, you still got at least 3 years for Thuney's at 35. He's still in the prime of his career. He's coming off 2 consecutive All-Pro teams. He is one of the top guards in the game today. He is in the last year of his deal. An extension is going to happen at some point. Okay. If you would have went out and got Zeitler, you're paying, 17, 18, $19 million a year anyway for a guard. That's the market. The market is what the market is. You can go, oh, it's too much for this guy. It's too much. That's what the market dictates. Tevin Jenkins is going to get big money on the open market because guards that's what they're getting paid nowadays. Some team will take a chance on him and think, okay, the injuries were just a fluke. He's healthy now. They're going to have his medicals checked out. And as long as there's nothing going on with his neck or anywhere where they feel that's like a degenerative condition, he's going to get paid big money. That's what happened. So they're going to re-sign Thuney at some point. It just makes sense. And the stuff I hear that besides the on-field stuff, the stuff I hear from hearing former Chiefs and hearing guys talk about it is you talk about his leadership. He is just one of those ass kickers at the old line. He takes no BS from anyone. He is going to be what we have not seen in Chicago since Olin Kreutz. He's going to have that kind of gravitas in the locker room. And then, like you said, he's bringing 4 rings with him. Who's going to question him? If he tells you what to do, you're going to do what he has to say. So this is another reason why I hope they draft some interior O linemen this year in the draft. Because how great would that be to have them have a young interior offensive lineman coming in with a guy like that in front of you to learn from? Beautiful.
Now, we'll ask the question about Joe Thuney as well. Why was Joe Thuney available?
Yes.
Well, the Chiefs already paid Creed Humphrey. They already paid their center big money, right? Top of the market money. He's still making more than Drew Dahlman, who we'll get to in a second here. But they brought back Trey Smith. Everybody thought Trey Smith was going to hit the open market. And they decided that they were going to tag him and they were going to try to work out a long-term deal. They've already got a lot of money sunk in one of their tackles. Like they have a lot of money in their offensive line. They've already paid their quarterback, obviously. And even if Mahomes' deal looks like, somewhat of a steal at this point, they've already paid some of those high-end players. Travis Kelce's coming back for another season. That's another hit on their books. They could not afford both Trey Smith and Joe Thuney. So when they decided to do this, that opened up when they decided to bring back Trey Smith and take him off the board for Chicago. Like, let's be honest, that was where everybody had him. That's what made Thuney available. So again, it doesn't have anything to do with the player. It has to do with the context and the situation. That's why that player was available. Yeah. It's not, I mean, they're going to miss him. They're going to miss Joe Thuney. They would much rather keep Joe Thuney if, there wasn't such a thing as a salary cap, right? But they have to make these moves. And you see that across the league. There's cost, cap casualties and things like that. So again, these are 2 guard moves that I think look even better after today, with all the crazy money being spent on guards that I don't think are as good, as certainly not as good as Tooney, but I don't even think as good as Jonah Jackson, that are getting crazy money, right? And so I think that both of these moves, I think, score really high for me. And then you finish it out today with Drew Dahlman of the Falcons getting a 3-year, $42 million contract, $28 million guaranteed. It's good. It's good center money, right? Like it's a really fat contract. Bill Zimmerman had Mark Schlereth on. Bill Zimmerman says, "I fear that this is a good player going to get paid great money. Welcome to free agency." That's kind of the name of the game. And Schlereth kind of pushed back, right? But pushed back, said, "No, I think he really is great. Moves really well. He'd be really perfect in Chicago if that's ends up what happened." And it did. So now you have completely rebuilt the interior of your offensive line. You've got a premium pick used in Darnell Wright at right tackle, who we both like a lot. He's improved over his first couple of years. You got Braxton Jones, who we both like. He is, a guy that gives you a good floor play. Braxton Jones is now probably your worst offensive lineman, whereas last year he was your second best.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of an amazing thing to happen in just a few days, where you have been able to remake this offensive line. So don't want to skip over your thoughts on Dahlman, though. What did you, this seemed like the thing that was going to happen all free agency period. Like this was like the least shocking signing that we've seen. But what were your thoughts about Dahlman coming in, and how does this kind of tie the whole room together?
Yeah, you need a center. I mean, it's for some reason it's always devalued in the draft, but teams and offensive lines, they rave about the leadership from that position. And Dahlman's a guy coming in who has that. Again, we talk about the leadership from Tooney. Dahlman's another guy that kind of comes in with that reputation of knowing what he's doing. He can get the pass pro set for things. He knows what he's doing up there. And the big criticism I saw from a lot of fans was Pro Football Focus kind of rated him as, most of his run blocks were all in outside zone scheme. So the narrative is, Dahlman can only block in an outside zone scheme. Well, that's what the Falcons ran. They were a predominantly outside zone team. So it's natural that most of his reps are going to be in the run game are on outside zone. Does that mean he can't run duo? Does that mean he can't, do inside zone? I mean, he may not have the power that a lot of centers have in the league. He is still a little undersized, but he's not Coleman Shelton, with the Bears just saw here. He's a little bigger than that. He has a little better anchor than that. So I think that, again, going back to Ben Johnson, this is who Ben Johnson wanted. I mean, if Ben Johnson would have rather had Ryan Kelly from the Colts, that's, I think, who Ryan Poles went out and targeted. This was Ben Johnson's guy. Ryan Poles went out and got him. This threesome inside now. It's. I mean, when's the last time the Bears had a group like this inside?
I mean, these are all earth movers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, there's are some bigger centers, but at some point you also want the mobility, right? You don't want a guy that's just, just a statue there either, right? It's a good question. Somebody asked me, when was the last time the Bears had on paper as good of an offensive line? And I mean, I'd have to kind of think about it, because you haven't seen them play together. So you really want to, like, let's answer that question in like November, right? Let's get a half a season, let them gel, let them start working together. I don't know, man. It's hard for me to not go back to, the Olin, Garza, you had some talent on those.
Reuben Brown.
Yeah. Reuben Brown, like, particularly so interior wise, like that's probably a good place to go back to if you kind of extend it out and say, okay, the whole unit, like the whole offensive line. I don't know, man. Like, you don't want to invoke the 85 and later offensive line. They were pretty young in 85, but that unit stuck together for a long time. You had Keith Van Horn, you had Jimbo Covert, Jay Hilgenberg. You had some really talented players. You don't want to go back that far necessarily, because that's always dangerous territory. You're starting to get the idea, right? Like you got a guy that's borderline Hall of Fame, type career if he's able to continue to stack some awards. And Tooney, you've got a young talent at right tackle, who I think is going to start stepping into his own here. So you see that there's some talent here, and then there's no real weak link. Again, people are going to come after Braxton Jones. I'm not about that life. I like Braxton Jones. Average is a good thing. Like Dan Moore just got paid a lot of money for being not that good of a football player.
Well, did you see the deal the Chiefs just gave out to the 49ers backup left tackle with 12 career starts? He's getting $15 million a year, 2 year, $30 million. So I tweeted out that, Braxton Jones, again, I've been saying this, when Jones is a free agent, whether the Bears re-sign him or not, Braxton Jones is going to cash in, right? And a lot of fans, Braxton Jones sucks. He's terrible. He can't anchor. Look, Braxton Jones has 60 plays in a game. He gets bull rushed into the quarterback's lap 1 or 2 times a game. He sucks all of a sudden. Okay. I'm not a huge proponent of the PFF grades on the O-line. I think they have a lot of weird things, but they have them pretty decent. Sports Info Solutions, another kind of group that analytics sites out there, they always have Braxton Jones is pretty decent. But more importantly, the Olin Krutzes, the Brandon Thorns, the Duke Manyweathers, the guys who evaluate O-line, that's all they do. They all say he's a pretty good player. I mean, he's not, Joe Thomas. He's going to be a serviceable guy that you can win with. And if he's your worst O-lineman,
right,
that's pretty damn good.
Because if he's your worst offensive lineman, now you know that. And when you call plays, you in protections, you can help him out.
Yes.
Right. Whereas, you can't help out 3 different offensive linemen that are struggling. Right. So when you're playing with the patchwork offensive line that the Bears have had the last couple of years, and let's just say last year, and you've got, I know Bill Murray had 40 snaps, but you've got, Pryor sliding in a guard. You've got all these moving pieces. You've got, an undersized center. You got to help out somebody. So who are you going to help out? Well, you're hoping that Braxton can hold up. And sometimes he does. And, there's been times where he hasn't. Now you can help him more than not, because that, hey, I can give a little extra help here. Right. But you just can't do that all around the offensive line. Somebody's got to be able to kind of stand on their own, or more than one guy has to be able to stand on their own. Now you've got guys that can do that. So, it's nice when the math changes from this is your second best guy to this is your 5th best guy. And I think that's what we're talking. The rising tide here. I mean, the floor has come up, and I'm really excited about what the ceiling can be, because I think you've got a play caller that understands offensive linemen and what they need, and how to play to their strengths and all of that. So I think that's even going to raise that ceiling even higher. But the floor should comfort you. The floor coming up with these moves should comfort every Bears fan, that you're going to see a level of competence that we just have not seen in years. I mean, it has been at least 5 or 6 years since we felt okay.
He's comped to Charles Leno a lot, right?
Yeah.
Both day 3 draft picks, both were, average-ish type players. Leno got a big deal from the Bears. The Bears let him go. He got a nice big deal from the Commanders. So a nice long career in the NFL. Jones be the same way. And look, I'm all for drafting his replacement this year if that's how the board falls.
Sure.
Get a guy in place and then you let Braxton walk or you re-sign him or whatever it is this year. But, it's all about you keep adding pieces to that O-line. And then that's what the good teams do. That's what the Eagles did. They keep adding guys, and, that's what the Chiefs did. I mean, that's one reason why they decided that they're going to put all their money into Trey Smith, let Tooney walk. His name escapes me. There's a guy they had that's in the wings. I think he was a 3rd round pick a couple years ago. They feel he can kind of step in, so that's what good teams do. They keep restocking. And when they have to let guys go, they have a guy in house to replace them.
Right. That'll be phase 2. Right.
Yes,
phase 2 is now to restock and have mentorships and work behind these guys that eventually will age out or need to, be released and go into different teams. So, all right. Hey, quick break here. On the other side of this, we'll talk about the rest of the moves and some odds and ends. Stick with us. All right, Lester, let's flip it around the other side. A couple of the other moves that were made today, big moves. One of them I think we saw coming, which was Deo Odangbo, 3 years, $48 million, $32 million guaranteed. That's an edge player, played for the Colts. Maybe not the top option that was out there in the universe. A lot of people were kind of hoping for Trey Hendrickson to trade to maybe materialize. I don't know what that would have ended up costing. The Bengals are, I don't know, bangling. I don't know what they're doing over there, but they haven't moved him yet, I don't think, unless something has happened since we clicked record. And so the Bears, we heard some rumors that maybe they were in on that, trying to get that trade. But eventually you can't wait forever. So you've got to move on. So Deo's maybe the kind of that second tier player, but definitely fits the type of guy that, defensive coordinator Dennis Allen likes in terms of measurables, and reminded you of a player that the Bears had on the roster until just a few days ago. So why don't you just kind of jump in with that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at him, he's a little bigger defensive end. He kind of gives you that inside-outside flexibility, which like what DeMarcus Walker did. I was not okay with letting DeMarcus Walker go at his price point. I thought he was a guy that, again, fits what Dennis Allen likes at defensive end. You can kick inside for some reps, but you look at the age. I mean, he's in his 30s now. A guy like Deo is 25. You look at where they're signing Deo now, and you look at his first few years in the league, it's very comparable to DeMarcus Walker. The Bears signed Walker when he was already 29 years old, right? So they're getting a similar player at a much early stage in his career. And again, we go back to the coaching staff. If this coaching staff feels, we can really mold this guy, he fits what we want from a body standpoint. He can set the edge, which is what, the Bears want their defensive ends to do under Dennis Allen. He's not going to be your pass rush guy, although we did have 8 sacks last year. Dennis Allen's more about creating mismatches up front where he will blitz a guy or he will kind of scheme a guy free. And a guy like Deo at 6'5", 280, he can occupy some space and let a guy get in there and get the sack.
So he pairs with Montez Sweat, but you mentioned the Eagles earlier. The Eagles, part of their brilliance is that they've got 7-8 guys and they can keep guys fresh, and then there's a constant rotation. So I'm always trying to think about the defensive line. Like, do you feel good about going 7-8 players and cycling through? Because you don't really want a guy out there for 100% of the snaps. Like, that just does not make that guy effective. You want to keep him fresh. And I think that's particularly important for the next signing, which was, I mean, out of left field, right? Like, I did not expect the Atlanta Falcons to release Grady Jarrett. Really good football player, had a very nice career. And then I don't know, Poles just on a heater, just feel like calling up right away. Like, what did they know he was going to get released? Like, this felt like it came together really fast. We certainly didn't have any, inkling that he would get released. And then all of a sudden the Bears are signing Grady Jarrett to a 3-year, $43.5 million deal. I don't have the guaranteed number on that. We'll try to track that down at some point here, but to me, this is the defensive equivalent of Joe Thuney.
Yes.
Very similar in terms of the amount of time they've been in the league. Very well thought of as a leader of their particular side of the football. Their defensive line, offensive line unit. This is also a guy he was a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee last year, so really well respected in the community. Good guy in the locker room. I mean, again, Poles has a type. I think it's a type that we all can appreciate and get behind in terms of wanting leadership and good, kind of the good guy mentality. But he went out and found leaders on both of these units, and so that's a pretty interesting approach. To be able to say this guy has, the skin's on the wall. He's done it before. He's going to have all the respect of his peers. Day one when he walks in, I need somebody to lead this defensive line unit, and this is my guy.
Yeah, it's another good signing. Like you said, he's comparable as far as he's 31, I think he is now. One thing I didn't know, I last year he had a bit of a down year, but from what I understand, he's coming off an ACL injury 2 years ago, right? So that usually that takes a year or two to kind of come all the way back from. He started flashing a little more as the year went on. He still put up some nice numbers, 50 some odd tackles from the defensive tackle spot. He still has that one gap penetration. He's got a quick first step. He gives you a viable 3-tech option. If you don't think Javon Dexter's going to take that next step as a pro, I think Grady's probably going to step in to be your starter there. Now you have Dexter kind of manning both spots because he's 6'6", 310. I mean, he's a big dude. He played more of a nose tackle job when he was in college. So, I don't think that's going to be a problem for him. And with Dennis Allen, like we talked about, he likes bigger guys anyway. So maybe you see Dexter kick outside the defensive end on a few reps. We saw that happen as a rookie in Chicago with Dexter. They ran him off the edge a few times against Penei Sewell. He had some nice success there his rookie year. So maybe Allen's going to move these guys around, find mismatches. Again, look to create, space for his blitzes because he'll blitz more than Flus. So I think it's a good pickup, Grady Jackson. Just Grady Jarrett, just not what you're expecting. It kind of came out of the blue. Plus, the nice thing is it doesn't affect the comp pick formula because he's a street free agent. Not sure if that's really going to matter this year because what's happening here, but you never know. I mean, we've already saw one Bear get kind of signed away. That's Darrell Taylor. I'm not sure what deal he got, but yeah, I mean, there'll be a few guys that get signed away, and it's nice that you're kind of bringing in these guys that you're not really spending too much on as far as free agency. So it's part of the formula that you always have to kind of factor in and see what happens.
One of the very valid criticisms of Ryan Poles so far in his tenure is that he has not been particularly smart about the comp formula. He's made a couple of decisions that have cost him comp picks, which, you hope that a guy can learn from. That I think that's honestly one of the most valid criticisms of his of his tenure so far. I'm not going down the comp pick route because they're spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
They're bringing in a lot of guys. Like I don't think this is the year that they need to be worried about the comp pick thing, but maybe, right? Like maybe it ends up working out because again, the signing doesn't necessarily count against that. I mean, you gotta kind of come, you talked about Dexter. I'm not worried about it because you've got Billings, you've got Dexter, and now you've got Jarrett. That's three legitimate, defensive tackle types that you're going to rotate between. And maybe there's a fourth guy that either is on the roster or it's going to be a cheap veteran. I don't think it's going to be Zach Pickens. I just don't, none of us have seen anything from him. And then you got to think the same thing about the edge defenders, right? You've got Sweat, you've got Deo. They're going to eat up a lot of snaps. But you've got Booker who can come in, and add in some pass rush reps. Maybe there's another guy that you either get in the draft at edge defender or another cheaper veteran. So I don't know what they're going to use these picks for, but again, you got to kind of think about 8 players that are going to get significant reps every game on the defensive line. And so I'm not worried about Dexter not playing now because you signed Jarrett. It's that you're optimizing these guys as snaps because you don't have to play Grady Jarrett 80% of the snaps. That would be a bad idea. You don't have to play Dexter, 80% of the snaps, right? Like you can keep these guys fresh. And that's only that's the secret sauce of the Eagles, right? Like that's what they did. They've got so many good guys, but they're just hitting you with wave after wave, whereas offensive linemen play 100% of the snaps.
Yeah, I think with the D line, I think there may be a draft pick coming. They're sitting there at 10. I mean, there's some value there for trading back. I mean, they say that the strength of this draft is a little later, like teens, second round. So I would love to see a trade back at 10. We'll see what happens, but I think the trenches are in play early. I know a lot of Bears fans think, oh, this means they're going to draft a running back at 10. I just don't see it happening. I think this is a good draft to kind of stock up on the trenches, get some depth in there, and then maybe get your running back a little later because it's a pretty deep running back class too. Yeah,
I think this is probably a topic for another show, right? We can talk about. There's a guideline, right? There's a lot of guidelines about team building. One of them is you don't take a running back that high at this point. Like that's the kind of the thing. And then when teams do, they get criticized, right? Even if it's Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, like those teams got criticized when they took a back that high, right? So the people that are pretty wonky about this stuff, that's what they say. Or you can't take a tackle with arms shorter than this threshold, right? It's another, right? To me, those are guidelines, right? And some of them are a little stricter than others, but if you violate or if you ignore those guidelines, you have to have a really good reason. And like if you drafted a tackle with shorter arms and you want to play him a tackle, it's because he's got really great feet and he makes up for it, right? Like there can be reasons why you're comfortable with that. taking a running back that high, particularly in a class that has a lot of good running backs, that's a tough sell,
Yeah.
particularly when you're a team that still can add players, that you would get at that point in the draft that you're not stocked in offensive or defensive line yet, right? So to me, that pick probably still needs to go to the trenches, and it
Yes.
would be a very luxurious pick to take a running back there. Now, if you think that Ashton Genty is absolutely LaDainian Tomlinson, like Lance Zierlein has him comp to on NFL.com, and you think I put LaDainian Tomlinson in this offense and this thing's just going to, be the top offense in the league, I hope you're right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I hope. But I also have so much confidence in the guy who's going to be designing the offense and calling the plays that I think that you could put a good running back prospect back there and he would produce, at a high level, right? Like he can elevate, a B player into an A- type of production. You don't necessarily need the A player. But then again, Kyle Shanahan goes out and trades for, Christian McCaffrey. So like, sometimes these guys don't think that way. They think, well, let me get that premium guy in here. He'll make my offense be as good as it possibly can be. So you don't know, but if it were me, I would still try to use that top pick along the trenches.
Trenches, and then get your back a little later, because this is a
little later.
pretty good class. There's a lot of guys that kind of come in. Like I said, it's all about Ben Johnson, right? If Ben Johnson, if he is who we think he is, I think he'll be okay with a third round back paired with DeAndre Swift, as opposed to spending number 10 overall on Genty. But
even if it's one of the second rounds,
yeah,
like that, I don't think anybody, so that people will complain because this fan base wants to complain.
We complain too. It's okay.
Not me this offseason. I'm as happy as I can be. Right.
Yeah,
I'm living my best life.
It's all about Ben Johnson, man. Ben Johnson is it was the key. Let's just see it happen now.
I gotta say, it's been a great offseason for me. Yeah. Some odds and ends before we just kind of turn it over to the Q&A with the people live here on the YouTube. Re-signed Tavares Moore, safety. They signed Durham Smythe, kind of a tight end 2 kind of guy, got some blocking ability. His hands are okay, but his name is amazing. Durham Smythe. That's a great name. Played for the Dolphins for a long time. So knew Ben Johnson back in the Dolphins days. They've got Chris Williams, the defensive tackle, on kind of a right of first refusal, restricted free agent kind of tender. I don't really understand. They can cut him and it doesn't cost any. Like it's a real weird thing.
It's a big deal, a $3.2 million for a guy that was your reserve, but he did it coming off his best season as a pro. I think if he's your defensive tackle 4, I think you can deal with it, but you still may try and upgrade there. And like you said, it's not a guaranteed deal. It's as a restricted free agent now, he can go out and find a better deal. If he finds a better deal and signs it, the Bears can match, or they can just say, nah, go ahead. You can go to your new team. So it's one of those things where it doesn't really hurt to put the tender on him. It's a little pricey, but where the Bears are in their cap space, it's a gamble they're willing to take.
They brought back Josh Blackwell, who we both like. Good football player. We're excited about Josh Blackwell coming back. Good, nice little deal for him. Special team guy, and then also a guy that can kind of plug in, play on defense from time to time. He's played well when he's been called upon. So that's a nice, kind of glue guy to bring back. Bill Murray coming back, right? Again,
we're
the
fans.
40 snaps. Yeah. So we liked Bill Murray's potential, but yes, some people always take it a little bit far. It's kind of the Tyson Bagent effect or something. I don't know.
Oh, geez.
What else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, I think they did a lot of good moves. One thing I noticed is that they really addressed the types of players for obviously Ben Johnson is getting his own line. He's getting the type of player Dennis Allen wants, and he's also giving some love to Richard Hightower. I mean, we talk about Blackwell, Daniel Hardy. These are his top 2 special team performers of a year ago. He's bringing these guys back. Tavares Moore, who started the year as a practice squatter, ended up getting signed to the active roster because of injuries, but he ended up being a pretty good special team performer. So, they're making sure that all three coordinators, all three phases are getting some love here on the early on. And there's still a lot of room. There's like 20 some free agents still on the roster that they're going to turn over probably. So a lot of room to make some moves here. The draft's going to be a lot of fun. But I think so far, after one day of free agency and the first week of trades, on paper, this is a much, much better team than we saw finish the season.
And I think you have to be excited about it, right? I mean, you know what? I'll take it back. I'm not going to tell anybody how to feel about it.
Yeah.
But I am excited about it. And if you were questioning whether or not you should be excited about it, I would encourage you to be excited about it, because it feels like this is the change. Like this is the sea change, right? You understand that you have, this cap space that can be spent, and even more so because you have the cheap quarterback, right? Like that this is taking advantage of that rookie quarterback contract. And so go for it, man. Like, sign a guy like Grady Jarrett because he comes available, because you can, right? That's what this is for. And this is the Bears, I think, announcing that they expect to be good. This isn't like maybe they take a year to figure it out and, put the pieces together. And I think they want to compete right now, which is, it should be music to everybody's ears.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ben Johnson took the job. I mean, he thought this roster was closer than a lot of pundits thought. Obviously we got the quarterback in place, and I know there's some fans that still think he isn't the guy, but 3,500 yards as a rookie is not the worst thing. He had a nice interceptionless streak. He's had some moments. The sacks obviously suck, but we're watching the Bears now address that part of it, and the whole Ben Johnson part of this, the whole marrying the run game to the pass game with the play action, the whole understanding how to protect the quarterback that Ben Johnson has shown in his play calling career, that's going to be huge for Caleb.
I'm looking through Twitter, which was not reliable today, just to make sure that there are no moves since we started. I am not seeing anything. What do you think is left? I think that there's going to be a free agent wide receiver that's going to be added to this room. A lot of people are still, thinking maybe that's Tim Patrick. That seems to be maybe the most logical move, but I would assume a wide receiver to pair with Moore and Rome. Anything else that because this is a lot. Like, this is a lot of money was spent, but also a lot of the big needs were addressed. So do you see anything else here before free agency sort of winds down, and then it's the draft, and then you get the next wave of free agency that fills in all the rest of the holes? So, do you expect anything else to be done before we just turn our attention to the draft?
Yeah, I think receiver is probably one. I mean, you have to have three in this day and age. You run so much 3 receiver sets. Patrick makes a lot of sense. His name escapes me, but there was another guy that was a former Lion. He played last year with a different team. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I'm sure someone in the chat will know, but he was just recently cut, who has a history with Ben Johnson. So now there are a couple options out there that Ben Johnson wants to come in. And look, the reason why a lot of the head coaches bring their own guys is, for one, familiarity. They understand the terminology, they understand the verbiage, kind of helps them having a guy that they trust that knows what they're doing out there. Plus they know what they expect, right? Kind of help, I'm not saying they're going to be coaches on the field, but you want to have those guys that kind of come in that kind of can be your voice as a player. Because hearing it from a coach is one thing, hearing it from a peer as a player is another thing. So if you got a guy that kind of speaks the same language as your coach, that helps. That's why I think you're going to see some more guys come in that has a history here with not only Ben Johnson, but also Dennis Allen.
Well, good stuff. Well, I'm happy, man. Like, I haven't done any writing really at all, because I just feel happy. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should write a happy article, but then people seem so mean, when you try to introduce any sort of sunshine. So I've kind of shied away, but since this Ben Johnson hiring, everything has gone well. And including the start to this free agency period, all of this makes sense to me. There's nothing that I can really get upset about, right? Like in the past few years, it seems like, oh man, they missed out on their top target. Somebody just sniped them or outbid them, or like, oh, this guy's coming out publicly and saying, he took less money to go play here. And by the way, it was Chicago that offered the more money, and or it's like, hey, we got this guy, but it was clear that they had to come way over the top to get this guy. This year, we heard that about Dahlman taking less money to come to Chicago, right? And so to me, this is an indication that the tide is turning. Now, maybe he took $500,000 less, over the 3 years. I mean, like, you don't know that, it might be enough just to kind of say the nice thing, but this is what happens when you start to get some excitement. The guys around the league kind of look and say, hey, I think this is a team that's on the rise. And if it's on the rise, then I'm playing in more primetime games. I'm playing in playoff games. And I'm able to show out, and I can cash in on that next contract, right? Or like I can win a ring, like, depending on where you're at and your motivation, those things can come into play. Once that tide starts to turn, then free agency is very different, right? You have guys that you can choose from a little bit more than trying to go out and just like throw money at them, right? Yeah. So I mean, I think this is to me, this is the dawn of the new era, and I don't want to overstate things. I know people love to just make fun of you or smack you down if you're wrong or whatever. But I've watched football for a really long time. It's in the modern league, it's about the quarterback and the head coach, and I think the Bears have both. And so why wouldn't I be excited? And getting proven good football players to add to this roster, in addition to some of the guys that I'm really excited about that are already here, why wouldn't I be excited? Come join me.
If they suck and they lose every game, we can be pissed off about it then. But right now, it's a good time. It's a good time to be a fan.
It looks good to me anyway.
Yeah.
We're going to get out of here. We're going to stick around for a few minutes to address a very active Q&A. I have not looked over there to see, but I see a big number. So if you ever want to join us, when we do go, we try to go Mondays, 6:00. We try to give a little warning out on the Twitter machine, on the website. Of course, go check out Windy City Gridiron, and also on the Blue Sky.
Blue Sky too. It was very busy today. I picked up a ton of followers on the Blue Sky.
Came in clutch today. Stepping in when the other site was not working. So come check us out from time to time live if you want to participate in the comment section. But until next time, bear down. What do we got?
A guy, Antonio, very, very active in the comments today, but this is one that just kind of popped up here, talking about how we were optimistic and hopeful last offseason. Yes, Antonio, we were. I mean, we were very optimistic about last offseason. Obviously, Caleb was coming in. You had a nice buzz with the number one overall draft pick, Roma Dunze, but we were also very concerned about Flus. The head coach we thought was a dumbass. We wanted them gone in the offseason. We hoped that Caleb and what they were doing there was kind of gonna, guide him through. We hoped as a coach he could improve, which, look, players improve, coaches can improve too. Flus did not improve. Flus was just as much of a dumbass as he was the previous year. What do you have? 4 blown leads. It's just, come on, dude. Flus was the reason that we were hesitant. Ben Johnson is in. Look, Ben Johnson might suck, right? When he was hired, a lot of talk was, well, he's never been a head coach. Maybe he can't be a leader of men. Okay. Maybe he has to have all the perfect things in place to have his offense work, right? I don't know. I think Ben Johnson, I looked at it from a schematic standpoint. I think he's pretty damn good. We've talked to Bobby Peters, who actually breaks down like the play calling, the sequencing, the play action, the marrying of the run and the pass. He is more excited than this hire than any hire that he can think of. It's all about Ben Johnson this year. If he's the guy that we all think he is, I think the Bears are going to be pretty good. And that's where my optimism comes from this offseason.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose at some level, if you are someone who really wants to just be the negative, like a lot of times you're going to be right. And we were trying to look at the roster. they started off 4-2, right? Like, I mean, they to me, they were a strong roster. And then it started to fall apart, and the coaching was even worse, and then it all fell apart because the locker room was lost, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, were they a whatever they finished 5-win team last year in terms of roster strength? I don't know. To me, they weren't, right? But that's what happens when you completely lose the locker room. No one believes in your head coach.
Chris Armstrong here followed up.
There you go.
The Bears have better talent than their record indicated. Removing Flus guarantees at least 4 more wins. I hope that's 4 more guaranteed, because that would be nice. Because then you figure plus minus. Maybe they got a couple extra because of the
addition
improvement.
by subtraction. Then you've got some moves, I think, that already have helped, right, improve this roster.
Yeah.
And then I think Ben Johnson's a plus, right? And then you've got year 2 of a talented quarterback. I mean, just things are moving in the right direction. I mean, I know that it's not cool to be optimistic. I get it. Like, it's not cool to be excited. But I don't know, like, objectively, just looking around the league, and you say, you know, when I try to do that every year, I try to do, you know, figure out what teams are going to be better than what the over under is projecting, and what teams are going to be worse than the over under, right? Like, those are a lot of the bets that I make. And I don't know what the over under for the Bears is going to be. But these are the things that teams do where you're like, this team's trending in the right direction, right? And then there's some teams that are, you know, they're clearly tearing down, which was the Bears a few years ago, right? So when we talked about it, we expected that, right? So yeah, our expectations weren't met last year, but again, they started off 4-2, right?
Yeah.
And it was the context matters here. You can't just look at the record book and say, "Yep, they were terrible." I mean, they were, but why?
Last year really surprised me last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm usually pretty close with what I think is going to happen. I really thought they were going to be pretty good last year. My only concern was Flus, and I was banking it all on Flus taking that step. And he just didn't do it. And I wish they would have just, like I said, this right now should be Caleb Ben Johnson year 2. And it just didn't work out that way. Axel, I hit the wrong one. Axel, he's flabbergasted. I don't know what though, but he's flabbergasted. I think
he's excited.
He's excited. I meant this one about Sanborn. Jack Sanborn caused a big stir when the Bears came out that they weren't going to tender him an offer. Would have been the same offer as Chris Williams, $3.2 million. It was a right of first refusal. That's just too much for a reserve. Even though he's your starting Sam, technically he's a backup because he plays less than your nickel. So maybe he comes back. You know, I thought Williams got too much money. I thought he would have signed a similar deal to what Josh Blackwell did, another restricted free agent who signed the 2 years. I think it was $4 million. That's more in the line of what some of these RFAs should probably pick up. You know, unless you're really, really playing above your pay grade, then I think that shot probably should have been. So I think Sanborn had the chance to come back. Maybe they're going to let him kind of go out and see what he sees out there and before he comes back, because, you know, I can't see anyone paying him big money. I just can't. I mean, he's still a little slow of foot, good special teamer. But if they lose Sanborn, ultimately, it's not something I'm going to lose sleep over.
A lot of this is rebalancing the distribution of money on your roster, right? Yeah. And you've got a lot of money tied up in your off-ball linebackers already. So, paying a premium, like, you probably think that you can get away with bringing in a rookie or, a younger guy, or let him test the market and come back, right? If no one else is jumping on him. Somebody might say, we've seen enough good stuff and we'll pay you starter money, but these are things I'm not losing sleep over. I know he's a fan favorite, but
yeah. Our guy, Brian Orenchuk, Bill Murray was a backup to look like a legit pro where you sat in Chi-Town, which is true. The fact that he came in and looked like he belonged. I mean, look, like I said, we're fans. Just some of the over the top, like he's already a roster lock, according to some people. Like, what are we doing here?
He signed to a futures contract, right? Like that's a pretty good, important distinction. He's not like on a full out deal. He still has to, earn a spot.
Real quick about Tooney, again, our guy Antonio extending a 30-year-old,
very active Antonio.
20 million plus is beyond stupid. Hope we don't. That's the going rate. I mean, if he's a starting caliber offensive guard, if you sign him to a 2 or 3 year extension, first off, let's say it's a 3 year extension. the third year he's never going to see, because the way the guaranteed money kind of fills up, it's going to be gone by the time you're ready to move on. If he's playing at a Pro Bowl, all pro level,
the bargain.
That's the market. I mean, especially with the cap going up, that's just the market. What starting guards get these days, look around the league. We saw today, what did the Packers give Banks from the Niners? That guy's bad.
Yeah.
$77 million. He's 26 years old, and he's not a very good football player. But that's what starting guards get. If you're a starting guard, Tevin Jenkins going to get big money. That's what it is.
He's played a lot of football.
Yeah.
It's
really going to happen if they extend him. Yeah.
Tooney's going to be, he's going to be first team all pro, the all 2020s Hall of Fame team, I think.
Yeah.
There's still 5 years left of this. So you can't get out too far, but the way it's trending, he'll probably be one of the guards for the 2020s team, which really puts him on track to be a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
That's how good he is. I get that it's hard to know that from another team. That everybody's seen the Chiefs play a lot because they play a lot of football. He's been in a lot of big games, but not only is he a really good leader, but this is a really, really good football player.
Yeah, should be fun. Kevin Brown, what do the Bears do with Ryan Bates? Is he your main backup center? I believe he has got a $4 million cap hit. If the Bears cut him, it's all off the books. So you could technically say $4 million right now. I think there's some value there if Bates is one of your interior reserves. I think you can do a lot worse, but I think they may let things play out. They may see what happens in the draft. Maybe they find a guy that, Ben Johnson likes as a reserve from his time in Detroit. Maybe someone shakes loose, and then you let this kind of play out during training camp. And if Bates does not win a primary backup job, then I think you cut him and you save that $4 million. But I think you hold on to him until you see what you get.
Yeah, I think you hold on to him, right? One of the other questions would be, is Ricky Stromberg, who you have a futures contract, is that a guy that comes back from injury and you feel good about, and you can get him, taking one of those spots for a minimum type contract, and then you can save a little money with Bates. But I don't think there's any need to move on from Bates right now. He'd probably go make more money.
Yeah. Real quick draft question. What will we doing will we draft Iowa in the second round or wait a bit? I think it depends on their board, right? If there's a guy there they feel is a good fit, they can't pass up, because they have 2 second-round picks right now. If they go D-line first, then I think their board may kind of get reshuffled, and it may go O-line at one point in the second. And that's also a sweet spot for probably a running back too. So I'm excited for the draft too. I think the way their needs are lining up, because they're addressing a lot of them, they can go a lot of different ways. Should be fun.
Go a lot of different ways. I don't think it'd be a bad idea to take a guard, right? At 41, I don't think there's anything, or 39, 41, I don't, whatever. I don't think it's crazy if they took a tackle at 10, right? I think that you can play now, right? You can start building the pipeline. That's the whole point, right? It's not just about the starters, right? The Bears haven't had good starting 22 in a while, right? But now they have it. I think for the most part they do, right? I don't think that's crazy. They need another defensive end. They need another edge, at some point. I think you need a better defensive tackle 4, but I think it's getting close. I feel pretty good about this. Maybe another safety if you're worried about Brisker and his concussion history, and you need a running back.
Yeah.
I saw this from Darius. Curious who plays left guard, who plays right guard. Tooney's going to play left. He's been there for 9 years. They're not going to make he's an all-pro. You're going to keep him there. They told Jonah Jackson, be ready for anything. So I think that said, hey, we've got you in. You got one of the spots here.
Yeah.
That could be either guard or the center. Be ready for anything. And then, until they got the trade with Tooney, they may not have known whether or not maybe they're going to go into the free agent market and try to sign a right guard, right? Maybe they're going to try to sign Zeitler and then play Jackson at left, or maybe some would have shaken out where they needed him to step in and play center. But with Dahlman signing and the trade with Tooney, that means Jackson gets that third spot, which is the right guard spot.
Yeah. Let's do one last one, and we'll get the hell out of here. It's getting late.
Get
You
out
think
of
you
here.
draft a tight end early? I did ask our guy Jacob Infante about tight end class. It's a pretty good class. As far as early, I mean, I guess technically now you probably could. I mean, the way you've addressed O-line and U.S. D-line, I guess anything's on the table. I'd be a little surprised. Although I personally do love the tight end position. I love what they do to an offense. Cole Kmet obviously is your Y. He's your inline guy. So I think if you find a move tight end, I'm not going to go 10, but if you find a move tight end in that second, third round, maybe trade back, pick up another pick. More weapons for Ben Johnson. If that's what Ben Johnson wants, let's do it.
I agree. We don't know what Ben Johnson thinks of Cole Kmet either, right? Like, he is a leader on the team, and like he might see how he can or can't use him, but we don't know yet. Right. We assume that he likes some of the players on this team, right? We would assume he likes Rome. We would assume he likes DJ. We would assume he likes Cole, but maybe he sees something a little different out of Cole, and maybe he wants, a different type of playmaker. Who knows? If that reveals itself, or it's an opportunity just to add a different slice to his offense, and he likes that, yeah, sure, go for it. I think it's probably a second tier need for me, but why not? All right. Well, we'll get out of here. Thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. The draft guys are the guys to listen to over the next few weeks for sure. I mean, everybody else is going to be cranking out good content. Lester and I are not your draft people, but we will try to bring some draft talk to prep us all and see where we're at. Let the dust settle here, and then kind of focus in. I think we need a deep dive on running backs. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Running backs are the most fun anyway. So we'll try to bring somebody in for that. But yeah, until we meet again, try to feel good about this. That's my advice.
There it is.
Thanks everybody.